Rolls-Royce have done it again. They created one of these very special models, and this is called the Rolls-Royce Droptail. I think this is an absolute beauty, not just in the proportions, but also in the graphics, because we do have some new graphics here that we haven't really seen in a Rolls-Royce in a very long time. For example, in the front end and in the rear. We're gonna have a look at that in a minute. That has still some connection to some very historical Rolls-Royce models, so it does have some connection to that, even though it might look like something brand new. So what we're gonna do here is have a look at this article first of all from Car and Driver, and then jump into Photoshop. I want to show you the gorgeous sketches from the design development of this car, and also of course show you the real thing from a front, side, rear, talk about the interior. So I'm gonna link this article down in the description as always if you want to go and check it out. So, Rolls-Royce unveiled its latest coach-built automobile, the Droptail, during the Monterey Car Week. A total of 4 Droptails will be built, and this is the first one. I love this burgundy color. This is called the La Rose Noire. Very fancy name for a very, very fancy Rolls-Royce. Recently, the company has taken this effort up a notch from a bespoke level of specialness to a new level, which is called Coach Build. The tale of custom tails now continues with the Droptail, which is again an open coupe, but this time with seating for just 2. And here you can see a very strange perspective of this car. This is, I wouldn't call this a great image to show the proportions of this, because it looks like the rear end is way too long here, but it doesn't, it looks a lot better in the press photos, which we're gonna show you in a minute. The Droptail's architecture is described as a monocoque made from steel, aluminum, and carbon fiber. And you also, I thought when I first saw this was all electric, because it looks a lot like the Spectre, but this is in fact powered by the V12 from the Phantom. The 6.7 liter V12 here got a 30 horsepower bump over the standard Phantom spec to 593 horsepower, and the torque is increased to 620 pound-feet of torque. The Baccarat Rose informs the exterior colors, which appear to be red and black, but the latter has dark red highlights. The Brightwork also wears a unique dark finish. The upright elements in the Rolls grille are angled for the first time. Not really for the first time though, which I'm going to show you in a second. And the lower air intake features 202 individual rectangular projects. Inside, you have 1,603 pieces of black sycamore wood trim veneer are used to create a design that suggests rose petals scattered in the wind. And also custom design, Audemars Piguet watch is mounted into the dash but can also be removed and worn if you want. You can see it right here. More details on that later on as well. 3 other Droptails commissions are still to come, each with its own specific detailing. Unsurprisingly, there's no pricing for this. This is a Rolls. If you have to ask, you can probably not afford it. But if we look at the Bowtail, which was the latest coach built by Rolls-Royce, that was apparently sold for $28 million. And honestly, I thought that was great looking, but I think this has a lot more structure in the rear end. So let's jump into Photoshop and let's have a look at this design, starting with the sketches, because I think Rolls-Royce is one of these companies that does the design sketches very well, shows off exactly what the idea is behind this design. So here you can see these very small ideation sketches that takes inspiration from, maybe this looks like a 30s, maybe late 20s Rolls-Royce down here, but you can see that we do have a new grille pattern for this Droptail, and it comes from this angle right here at the bottom. Usually it's all a rectangle, it doesn't have this chamfer at the very bottom, but you can see how they took inspiration from previous models of Rolls-Royce. And I do love this sketch here, because you can see the shoulder line just dipping down in a typical Rolls-Royce manner, and then you have this line going upwards a little bit, very subtle in the real model, and otherwise very clean surfacing on this design with a super short windshield, and this proportions here from the windshield to the body is just fantastic. It gives it a very nice planted solid look to it. You can see again here the inspiration taken from previous models with this fender line that dips down right here and then goes into the rear end with this curvature. They want to have something similar to that in the new Droptail. In the rear end, this is probably the view that is going to be most controversial when it comes to Rolls-Royce, because it doesn't necessarily look like any other modern Rolls-Royce, but it still has a connection to previous models. Again, as you can see down here with this 30s Rolls down here with the vertical taillights now being integrated right here in the new Droptail as well. And here is this beautiful side view. Again, I love the sketching style that we have here, showing off the highlights by adding more lines closer to each other. It just looks great, this sketching technique. And here you can see a clear rear view. I do love the chamfer that we have here, and it looks so good in the real car as well. And the front end also has the same type of angles to the chamfer. It feels like this is a little bit more dynamic than what we're used to seeing from Rolls-Royce, and I kind of like it. Then you have this sketch down here, which shows the open top and also, again, the proportions between the height of the windshield and the height of the rest of the body, creating this passenger area and making it feel like it's sitting very, very low inside of this car. And again, you can see the chamfers back here. I just wanted to throw in this sketch because this is more of a complete render of what the final product is going to look like. Now, going into the real product here, the Droptail 2024. As I said, they're only going to build 4 of these, and I'm looking forward to see what the other 3 are going to look like when it comes to the theme of this. This being the inspired by the black rose and all these petals that you have in the interior and stuff like this. But the lines of the proportions of the other 3 are obviously going to be the same. So here you can see this new grille. So I've linked a video down in the description, which is very interesting because it is an official Rolls-Royce video where they talk about these design details and how they actually came up with them and why they are on this specific Rolls. Stuff that like we haven't seen in other modern Rollses. For example, we have this chamfer right here. So we have an angle at the very bottom of the grille that is new for modern Rolls-Royces. We also have this beautiful line at the top. So this is a clear line where the graphics then starts underneath this line. And you can see that this chamfer that goes underneath the headlight then goes into the grille. So we have an angle here on these spokes that we have in the grille are actually angled at this point. So they angle inwards at the very top. Also something that we haven't really seen in modern Rolls-Royces, but I think it looks great. One thing though about this, you know, it's very weird to say these times when we have grills being so huge, but I think this grill might actually look a little small, specifically for a Rolls-Royce. I would want to have it maybe extend a couple of inches further down into the bodywork here to make it a proper, you know, Rolls-Royce imposing grille in the front end. And here you can see the lower intake as well with these separated rectangles inside of here. I'm not so sure about this chrome piece that sticks up. I'm not sure if this is chrome or whatever it is, but I want to have them be cut a little lower than this and not have them stick up so far into the bodywork like we have here, because I want to have a clear visual separation between the top half of the graphics and the lower half. And you can see here that these stick too far up into that border that I want to see on a Rolls-Royce. Now, looking at the side view, I think this is probably my favorite view of this new Rolls. I think it's a gorgeous sculpture on wheels, and I do love the rear end. I know a lot of people are not gonna like this because it doesn't look like any other modern Rolls-Royce, but in my opinion, I think this is a step forward for Rolls, experimenting with some new ideas for the tail lights and the rear end integration. I love the chamfer that we have here and the integration of the taillights. And it's okay for me to do stuff like this because I think it's cool that they're taking inspiration from, they talked about hot rods and the 30s and 40s Rolls-Royces when they designed this. And you can clearly see that, specifically when you have a look at this proportion again with the greenhouse and just how low it sits compared to the massive bodywork that we have going down all the way to the very end. I do like these wheels as well. They have this turbine feel to them, but in a classy way. And here you can see this line that we talked about. Not really a line, but a soft surface sculpturing of the side to have this classic feel for the side view, then goes in this curvature and then continues all the way back, looking very nice. And looking at this picture and comparing it to the one we saw in the article, here you can clearly see the proportions a little better. It looks more natural right here than it did on this picture that I showed you in the article. For the first time ever, we also have the double R's integrated in this wing here. I do like how this sticks up with the bodywork. It creates more of a, it feels almost more like a protection for the occupants inside. You can see just how low you're sitting, because all we can see here from a side view are the headrests. So you're sitting very low inside of this coupe, and it gives you this cozy feel. You also have the indicators now integrated in this piece. So the front of the door handles, this is where you have the indicators. Normally you have the indicators right here with the Rolls-Royce logo, but they wanted to have very clean surfaces on the car, and they didn't want to ruin that by adding something on the front fender right here. So instead they implemented the indicators in this area. Now looking at the rear end, this is where it gets very interesting to me, looking at the design of this, because as I said, it doesn't really necessarily feel like a Rolls-Royce, but I still think it looks absolutely fantastic. Simplistic in combination with a couple of sharp key lines, and then we have this big chamfer here, which is absolutely beautiful, housing the floating wing here. So you do have sort of a wing, because this piece up top is actually floating. So you have the air flowing down here and then coming out underneath, creating the downforce that is needed at high speeds. Further down, we do have a pretty substantial diffuser part, which I'm not so sure about. If there's anything I would like to change on this Rolls-Royce, is probably the lower section of the rear end, because I maybe think, I'm not so sure, but it feels like the diffuser sticks up maybe a little too high and takes up too much space in the lower section, because it's almost 50-50 here. If we make a line here, put the center line right here, you can see the diffuser sits almost further up than the center line of the height of the rear end. I want to bring that down a little bit. Another detail that I'm not so sure about are the shape of the exhaust pipes, because they have this styling to it, taller right here and then becomes thinner as we go closer to the center of the Rolls-Royce. I just want to have them be straight like this and have a very simplistic layout and outline for the exhaust. So not have this up angle like you can see here. Instead, I want to have it be straight and horizontal like this. I think that would suit the Rolls-Royce a little better. Now, looking at this interior, and this is also, again, an absolutely gorgeous interior. And here you can see this timepiece that you can actually take out from the dash. Audemars Piguet watch that you can wear if you want to. When you're not wearing it, you just place it back into the dash, which is just nuts. I haven't never heard about that before. But what I do like about this interior is I do like this pattern. I think this pattern looks fantastic. And that we have analog gauge clusters, and these dials are also beautifully sculpted. Feels like the designers, of course they did, because it is a Rolls-Royce, but this is what I'm talking about. I feel like when you have a very, very upscale model, the interior pieces are going to be less digitalized and more like craftsmanship inside, small details inside of the dash that are actually physically manufactured, and that's exactly what we have with these beautiful dials and all of these other buttons that we have, the air vents as well, and the dash. You have physical buttons for everything in here. You can see just how high up this center console comes, and this is something that they want to have and intentionally sitting very high up, again, so that you feel like you're sitting very low inside of this Rolls-Royce. Overall, I think it's a fantastic job by Rolls. And this is actually a design language that I hope to see, specifically here in the rear. I hope to see more of this chamfered and chiseled design language from Rolls-Royce, while keeping this very important down curvature that we have in the shoulder line, then going into this very sloping rear end. I think it's a beautiful design, and even though the chances are very slim, I hope I get to see one of these in real life at some point.